Okay, I'm Panera, and we are here with the first Heart of the Swarm mechanics of StarCraft. We're going to talk about the Mothership Core and all of its magic abilities, and we've got a really cool, constellation of people here. We've got the, I guess you call him a director of the One Goal Project, looking to sort of independently balance StarCraft. And, yep. We've got Top Secret, who is part of that project, I believe, and is streaming for us. We have Zappy, our resident magician, and newcomer Slick, just a friend of mine who's a pretty funny guy, so invited him along. And we've got this guy named iNcontroL, who's now he's a professional player and streamer, right? And announcer as well, caster. Is that right? Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure he cast. He did some casting in DreamHack anyway, and he's in on the call. So I'm sure he'll say hello in a second here. So yeah, the Mothership Core. Let's talk about it a little bit. What are its abilities here? I haven't played the game in a month, so it's got what is it called? Photon Overcharge, was it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the defensive thing where it circles around the top of the Nexus and then shoots balls of garbage.
Not since early beta, bud.
Oh, what's it called now?
It's still Photon Overcharge. It just enhances a Nexus and turns it into a photon cannon.
Oh.
Yeah, nothing really circles around it. It just kind of, all of a sudden, large gobs of stuff come out of the top of it and kill things. And
it's also got, what is it? It has the recall ability, which functions a little bit different than the original recall ability.
Yeah, it teleports within, I think, 7 range of it to a Nexus.
Oh, okay. Okay, and then we have the time warp, which is perhaps my favorite thing that Blizzard has added to Heart of the Swarm, if only because it makes Zappy a little bit skittish as far as figuring out what's going on with it. So why don't we start?
Yeah,
with
I talked to some people today, but didn't come up with anything solid.
All right. So what's your leading hypothesis on time warp, Zappy?
Well, okay. So given the discussions I had earlier today, we determined that it can't be some sort of relativistic effect, just because it would be near impossible to get it to act at a distance like that. It would be ridiculously hard to have it not affect your own units and only affect ground units and all this other nonsense. There were 2 interesting theories that came up in the discussion. One was something about it being an electromagnetic field, kind of mucking up the works, so to speak. And the other one, very helpfully put forth by Vendetta, is that it actually creates a large amount of bacon in the vicinity of said units, and then they're all distracted.
Okay.
That's
actually pretty much how
it's more solid than the electric field theory.
Well, given relativity and all that jazz, I was thinking about this today. Now, if you have a gravity well, would that not affect the movement speed of units relative to those outside of it?
Yes.
Now, of course, obviously having it affect your own units creates an issue, number one. And number 2...
Also, creating a gravity well that large creates a whole set of different issues.
As in Zealots getting crushed instead of just waltzing through.
Yeah.
So there's very little common sense to the spell, I think. Does anyone else have...
That really boggles my mind is that attack speed is completely unaffected.
Yeah, that's another reason why we determined it wasn't a relativistic effect, because attack speed is unchanged.
Okay, but if it's impacting their movement speed, let's just take a Zealot, for example, and how they swing their arms. How is it that their legs are affected, but their arms are not?
I don't even think we should try. I'm going to be honest. I don't think we should try to justify the ability.
Blizzard, you done fucked up. You done fucked up.
If they modified the attack speed as well, then it would have been just fine.
Yeah, see that's...
Well, it would have been theoretically possible for us to attempt an explanation, but as is, I don't even want to try.
What if it's a local thing where say it's
obviously a local thing.
Like a gradational shut up. like a gradational thing, right? Where it's stronger on the ground. And that's why movement speed is affected. But as it raises, it goes up, that would explain why flying units aren't affected.
Oh, right, but then you're talking about a, like, locational thing that is stronger on the ground, but still goes out in an area of, like, what is the size of the spell, like 3 matrices or something across?
Yeah.
I mean, in theory, if you've got, like, say it drops something down that's generating this field, then it would also go up 3. I mean, it would go out in a sphere uniformly from the spot that it's at, unless you were, like, charging the ground or something, and the field is being projected by the ground.
Yeah, like if it's like when you have a sphere. And
also,
you
we see a giant bubble.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that might just be a visual effect as far as, because the bubble effect itself doesn't really have a whole lot. Like, I mean, if you take the sphere itself, presumably we're seeing half of it, right? Half on top, and then half that maybe goes under.
Fantastic internet.
Shut up, Nathan. Basically, what I'm thinking is we're only seeing half of it, right? Because is it possible that it's projecting underground as well to make a complete sphere?
It probably is. I mean, I see no reason why it would form half a sphere.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't see why it would form a sphere at all. I don't see why it wouldn't affect moves or attack speed. I don't see why it wouldn't affect air units. It's not a spell that's worth us trying to figure out.
I think it is. I really think there's something to this
so
sort
ridiculous.
of... like, if you take a plane and cut a sphere in any way you want, really, just as long as it's through the diameter, that's like where the maximum surface area is. It would be along the diameter, right? So, hypothetically, I mean, if you're looking at a very localized thing, perhaps as it moves upwards or downwards comparatively to the diameter, it's lessening in effect, hence why we only see the movement speed affected.
Okay, but in that case, you would still have to have you would have to have the field being projected from the ground. Because otherwise it would, I mean, yes, it might not affect weapon speed as much, still be a definite noticeable impact. And I'm going to be honest, I don't even remember what my second point is. I just hate this ability.
Okay, we're trying our damnedest here, Dustin Browder, but you done fucked up.
Here's another possible theory.
Okay, to be clear, I like the ability in the game, but just trying to explain it is giving me a migraine.
Could I,
Yeah.
What if okay, so currently in the one goal mob, the Sentry has Time Warp, and it affects pretty much everything and doesn't distinguish between friend or foe. So could you explain to me, because I'm a complete ignoramus when it comes to science, how that would work? I mean, how do you create a relativity bubble?
I mean, pretty much you just need an extreme condition. I mean, I don't want to get too crazily in depth with the relativity nonsense, but basically what you're looking at is you need to create like a high gravity or high energy, high move speed, really anything extreme. So like in relativity, you've got things like time being a function of your relative speed.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, even if what the time warp did was like some sort of weird relativistic effect where they, massively increased the gravity and then that slowed you down relative to the world around you, you could end up... It's weird. I mean, I don't really want to try.
Okay.
But so there are relativistic effects that you could look at that would explain it. The difficulty mainly is getting them to act at a distance in a localized area.
And also being
essentially.
Don't forget that it's not indiscriminate, so you're getting it affecting one group versus another.
Right. I mean, there's that, but like he was talking about the one goal version where it does affect everybody.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And because with it being in a bubble like that, I mean, there's very obviously a source in the center of the bubble, or what are we trying to determine if there isn't? I mean, why would it be in a bubble if there was no source? It drives me crazy. If it was centered around the Mothership Core, you could try to do something where the Mothership Core is acting like a small black hole or something that distorts space and time around it, which you could definitely see the effects that we see in
like
that kind
vortex?
of situation.
Yeah. Here's what I'm thinking though. What if it shoots out some sort of extremely dense grouping of particles? And we've seen actually recently. IBM did a stop motion animation. I don't know if everyone's seen this, where they zoom in like 50 billion times or whatever silly amount, so that you're actually looking at atoms, and they're manipulating them so that it's like a boy playing with a ball.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's really, really remarkable. If you haven't seen it, please go see it. But we do know, because of that now, that such fine manipulation of atoms is something that's possible. Now, imagine that you have extreme densities, or the ability to create, through whatever means, you'd have to figure this one out, Zappy, some way that you can take a grouping of molecules and make them like extremely dense, but have it only last for a certain amount of time. Certain amount of energy applied to it, and that would.
Well, I mean, that kind of makes sense in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry. What I was gonna say is, like, even black holes over time. This is over an enormous period of time. This isn't like seconds like we see in game, but even black holes evaporate by emitting like X-ray radiation. And like, if you look at, what are they called? Cosmic decades, I think. There's this theory of the universe where, you take discrete time periods, and then each decade, as they call it, is 10 times longer than the last. And somebody, like, mapped out the entire, like, life of the universe. Anyway, at some point, everything's a black hole in this guy's theory, but then eventually the black holes do end up evaporating, because every now and then there's like this little bit of radiation that escapes. What I'm trying to say is, it's not completely crazy that you could have it not exist forever and ever.
Okay, so there's a way that you could potentially make it a finite thing.
Correct.
Okay, so in some regards, the core concept behind this time warp thing, in particular the way that One Goal is using it, there is some realism behind that.
It's not completely awful, but it's beyond our current understanding of relativity.
Yeah, I mean, it's
beyond our current manipulation, I should say.
Yeah, it's one of those things that hypothetically should be possible. Unfortunately, when you get into the finer points of the balance affecting one side versus another, and not attack speed, and you run into a little bit of issue, right? Because you're looking at, like, from what I was hypothesizing, a 2D projection on the ground that rapidly sort of disseminates so that it doesn't affect attack speed. But that, I mean, you're right. It is a garbage thing to try to explain, but that's what we're here to do, right?
The other abilities aren't quite that bad.
All right, explain.
I'm going to say that.
All right. Well, how about photon overcharge? Let's talk about photon overcharge.
Okay, well, first off, here's what we know about it. We know that A, it has to be cast on a nexus.
Okay.
B, it gives us a giant high-damage, high-range cannon. And C, it has photon in the name. I mean, what this basically tells us is that it's some sort of laser. Just in case there's somebody who doesn't know, photons are like little discrete light packets. It's what light travels in. Light is actually in finite amounts of energy. Like, it's not just, we have X amount of light. It's always a multiple of some really small number. If that makes sense, like, you can't just have any amount of light energy. It has to be a multiple of a specific number, and that small little number is a photon.
Okay.
So
here's my question from what I've seen, is that it seems to attack. It's not something that the player can, like, click on it and then A-click, is it?
I believe you can target it.
Okay,
actually.
so you can target fire. So there's something about the Nexus that allows them to sort of focus it, similar to a cannon, right? My question then would be, why the hell don't you have this ability on nonstop, or just stick a cannon on top of a Nexus?
Probably because it requires more energy than they're willing to use. I mean, it's called photon overcharge, right? I mean, the overcharge is probably the reason they can't use it constantly. It would either overheat the Nexus, so to speak, or it just requires more energy than they're able to constantly put out. It also takes energy from the Mothership Core, so, I mean, it's not totally unrealistic to believe that the Mothership Core has to feed it energy to get it to work.
Well, what if they were to take one of these cannons, like just straight up photon cannons, and take, like, a staple gun, and just, like, staple a few of them to the sides of the... Because those are presumably self-contained cannons, right?
Not entirely. I mean, they do have to be near a pylon.
Well, okay, fair enough. Yes, they do have to be near a pylon. Okay, so what does that tell us about how pylons interact with them?
It tells us that. Well, okay, so I'm not entirely sure that we can draw the comparison between the photon overcharge and the photon cannon. It sounds a bit silly, but they function very, very differently. Really, the only things that are the same is they can both hit air and ground, and they both do 20 damage a hit. For example, photon overcharge has a range of 13, and photon cannons have a range of 7.
The animation is considerably different too, is it not?
It is, but the animation doesn't fit with anything else, so I'm trying to ignore that.
Oh my god, you done fucked up, Blizzard.
The animation looks almost exactly like what I would expect from, say, a plasma cannon.
Okay.
Because it looks like this glob of material that chases down targets.
Is it not possible
but in actuality,
to use photons to make plasma?
Right, I mean, you could have a laser heat up something and then it would turn into plasma, but I like my idea where there's no plasma involved better.
Yeah.
Where you have essentially, like, there's this little crystal floating at the top of the Nexus, and I always remembered asking myself, what is the point of that little crystal? But if we go with, photon overcharge shooting out of that crystal, which if you look at the animation, it does come from near that crystal, we could have a laser being charged up inside the Nexus and then focused through that crystal at things.
Okay.
And I really liked that explanation, so I'm going to go with it.
See,
I mean, it's a giant bolt of energy, so presumably it would probably have to be plasma. I mean,
So it's entirely possible that it could turn the air that it travels through into plasma. I mean, that's not unreasonable.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, I like that. You see, here's one thing that I think would be rather interesting. Now, we've got the guys from one goal on the call here, and I like that what they've done with the Sentry has made it so that this ability makes more sense from not only a logical standpoint, but from a scientific one. So they're taking not only the balance of the game and playing with it, but what they're doing is they're actually taking some of the lore as well.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't one goal entirely about creating a better designed game rather than a better balanced game?
Thank you for making that distinction. Thank you so much. I didn't want to say anything, but that
Okay, yeah,
our balance is pretty much not as good as Blizzard, but I think we have better dynamics.
Well,
but yeah, it's a more fun game to play. It's more of what you wanted in a game.
And don't forget, I mean, also game design also encompasses things like
Steam, absolutely.
Yeah, so
right.
So I mean, it's something as little like I've harped on the Defense of the Ancients developer forums about how the Batrider unit model has fucked up bat wings and it doesn't look right, and they say, oh no, you can tell it's a bat, and I'm like, okay, well, to somebody who actually gives a shit, you might as well make a spherical gray blob and call it a bat, rather than, get it right. So I actually, appreciate that it's not just strictly balance that's being taken into consideration, even if it's inadvertent. Whoa, that was some weird feedback. Did someone just
interesting. That was Zappy.
Did someone just?
Yeah, that was my mic. My headset occasionally cuts out and then cuts back in, and it makes that weird noise.
Okay, fair enough. Anyway, I really like that. Anyway, sorry to interrupt the little tirade or whatever there that you were going on. I just wanted to comment because we have them finally on. I mean, we've worked fairly. We've tried several times to get you on with Jeff. Unfortunately, this time there was that technical issue on his end.
Oh my God, I looked at that and went, "It's going to be another one of those nights."
Yep.
All right, another time. I just really the one thing I wanted to do this evening
was what?
That it made from basically a guy was an ass to him on the stream and he handled it, I think, in the and professional manner I've ever seen anyone in the community handle as a really bad heckle. Mm-hmm. I think if it was DJ Wheat, he would have gotten mad, and I know if it was me, I would have torn the guy's head off. But he was really awesome. I wanted to pass it along. But another time, I'll have to try it another time.
Yeah, well, we'll figure it out. He's a regular. It's been tricky with DreamHack and all that jazz. But anyway, back on topic here. Yeah, I want to ask our newbie, Slick. You there?
Yep.
All right. What is the other ability that the Mothership Core has that we haven't covered?
I don't think I've used it. I have no idea what it is.
Recall? Right. How do you think this works, Nathan? I want to hear this from you.
Well, you said the other ability.
Yeah, recall.
It's obviously it's got to be like black holes. There's really no other way to just teleport. Not that I know.
Quite true, but there is quantum teleportation. That's always something you can factor in as a possibility.
Yeah, that can
It does look a lot more like what we've described as quantum teleportation in our other teleportation discussions. Like just the animation in game.
Yeah, I mean, Vortex, I believe the Mothership proper still has Vortex, yes?
No.
No.
That was
only
okay.
Wings of Liberty.
Well, looking back at Wings of Liberty, the vortex itself, that's more of like a black hole, but they can only put so much energy into like creating that density that it just wears off rather rapidly, right? The question is why things aren't crushed while they're inside. But
It wasn't the alpha.
Well, I mean, I think that's the distinction between a black hole and a wormhole.
Yeah, well, technically a wormhole would still crush the things because it's the singularity creates it.
Right, okay, I'm not going to try to throw something through a wormhole. I should have clarified that. But at the same time, okay, I wouldn't want to try to send something through a wormhole, but, like, if you're just talking about them, wormhole has a less, like, you can still, theoretically, with a really well-constructed wormhole, you could maybe get something out mostly intact. With a black hole, it's just crushed, period, end of story, then nothing to it.
Well, on the other hand, have you heard of the Casimir effect, negative energy, by any chance?
the Casimir effect?
What was that again?
The Casimir effect. It's a method of generating negative energy. It's
well, actually, trolling is a method of making negative energy. I mean, you'll have to explain this for us.
All right. So the Casimir effect is. I'm going to put this in the chat real fast. The Casimir effect is something that's been tested. Basically, if you have two metal plates, I don't remember what material they are, but like two metal plates, you hold them close enough together so that their atoms are trying to push each other apart because of the electromagnetic energy. Then it will start generating negative energy, and it gets canceled out almost immediately. But it's been theorized that if you inject negative energy into a black hole or into a wormhole, it will decrease the density of the singularity enough to open a way through the black hole. It's very small. It takes a lot of negative energy to do it, but
it's
that's
kind
how
of
you
like
can get
feeding the black hole.
Feeding the
right. And it opens up the singularity a little bit so you can get something through it.
Okay.
Technically,
sorry, go ahead.
You might be able to do that with a black hole as well, so that it just holds things instead of crushing them, but that would take a hell of a lot of energy.
Now, what I know from...
Well, I mean, in theory, what we're talking about when it has to hold something is it sends it somewhere else where it's not where it's kind of a non-issue, and then it brings it back. Right?
Okay,
I mean, it's not like it's holding it directly there where the black hole is.
I'm going to play Stephen Hawking here, okay? I don't have the proper robot voice, but from what I saw and have heard from him, not personally, obviously, but anyway, he was saying something about, wormholes potentially being everywhere, all over the place. It's just that a lot of them are really ridiculously small.
Micro black holes?
Yeah. Isn't that
wait, so you knew about micro black holes and you didn't believe me when I said black holes could evaporate?
No, I did believe you. I just chose to be a dick.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
That's fair. Yeah, fair
like,
enough.
I mean, the idea of black holes evaporating is like the entirety of the micro black hole theory.
Okay. So they're more, and as far as I know, they've observed one traveling as well, like moving in a direction throughout the universe. Am I wrong with that? I think they've.
Oh, like an actual black hole, not a micro black hole.
Yeah, like an actual one. Yeah.
Yeah, they move.
Okay, so that's pretty sweet.
I'm not.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, motion is relative, so.
Yeah,
true. Maybe we're.
For all we know, that's staying still and we're moving.
But, oh my god, that pisses me off so much.
I know. I figured it would. But I mean, nevertheless, it's not crazy to think.
Okay, so where are we at with what recall actually is then? Now, after all that scientific spieling.
I'm still going to go ahead and say quantum teleportation because I mean that quantum effect is already in place because of the warp gate. I believe because of the warp gate mechanic and the psionic matrix.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the crystal on top of the Nexus is the same crystal that's in pylons. So it still generates that Nexus, and it's probably a little bit bigger, has a stronger field that can support a Nexus being warped in around it.
Yeah,
or a mothership being warped in around it.
Powered. I mean, it doesn't need a pylon to power it, so it's a pretty safe assumption that it has a giant fucking crystal inside.
Yeah, I would assume that's fair as well. See,
yeah, Top Secret's pretty smart. That's basically what I was
going to say. I don't know
if
you guys ever noticed, but there's actually a little crystal that kind of rotates on top of it.
Yeah, that's a little crystal.
Yeah, that's probably just for for decoration.
For focusing the laser.
Oh,
We've been over this.
okay, focusing the laser.
Oh, man, I explained this 20 minutes ago.
On a full-size Nexus, that crystal, if you scaled it up, that crystal is actually pretty fucking huge.
Yeah, that's true. There is scale issues as far as like battle cruisers being the same size as Marines or whatever garbage goes on in that hideous game. So, sorry, I haven't played. I should clarify. I haven't played HOTS in like. I played through the campaign twice, got through the Derp Zerg stuff. It's just not a fun game. It's just not. But there's still cool science to be talked about. So,
I disagree.
That there isn't cool science. Screw
no,
you.
I disagree that it's a boring game.
It's
I demand that we have a heated debate right now.
Dota's better. I'm sorry to butt all the fans.
That's just sad.
Dota's 100% better.
No, Dota, as far as an esport goes, Dota has RNG, man. With randomly generated numbers, like that definitely...
Actually, from what I know about...
Dota's like the only esport that has lower viewers than StarCraft, man. Why would you pick Dota to make your StarCraft suck stand on?
And at least you can make... I mean, the best argument you can make is League, because League is absolutely trashing StarCraft in every.
There's a reason for that, and it's a very simple.
What a coincidence! It's a really trashy game.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the reason why League of Legends is beating out StarCraft.
No one really cares.
No. I'm not going to get it. Okay, it's going to be really brief. Okay. The average IQ in America is like 91. Bam. There you go. That's what. 100%.
So why is it beating it in Korea?
Because their average IQ is only like 97. Seriously?
Wait. Okay. I've got this. Panero, what would you say the average IQ in Canada is?
Well, since I'm bringing it up pretty high.
See, I knew it.
No, it's,
the bias is on
I believe it's somewhere around where the States is, like 90, 93, somewhere like, where it's like, minuscule and doesn't really fucking matter. But yeah, there's a lot of retarded Canadians. I can confirm that.
Oh, you mean like all Canadians?
No. Being Canadian and being retarded is different. I've been over this time and time again, okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot.
It's different. There's your regular Canadians, and then there's your retarded Canadians.
And then there's French Canadians.
Okay, well, let's just not even... you know what? I don't want to get into that. Let's just leave that where it is, because there's also Newfoundlanders, so... Okay, we're off topic here. I want to know about how does when you mass recall the unit, the animation, I believe they kind of fade out, so they're a little bit translucent, and you're not able to target them or whatever. They can't be fired upon, right?
No, they can. Yeah, they can still take damage while they're like.
But they can't fire back though, right?
Correct.
Okay, so why is it that they can take damage but they can't give it?
You want my guess?
Anyone suggest something. I mean, I'm not a magician.
Okay. My guess is that with the quantum teleportation process, they're being sent back, not in parts per se, but not all at once. Does that make sense? Like
the Star Trek teleporters.
Yeah, because they kind of fade out, and then they fade back in, right?
Okay, and how does that work with... Do you remember in Wings of Liberty, it was one of the Zeratul missions, the one where you get the Colossus and have to go around the giant overmined carcass? Yeah. There are Protoss that are stuck in the warp field or whatever. So how does that factor into all this mass recall? Okay,
so I've been over this like 900 times in the warp gate thread, but basically it doesn't factor in. The warp gate that they would have had to have been stuck in at the Fall of Ire is not the warp gate that they use in StarCraft 2.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So the idea that the theory of the quantum teleportation theory that we're talking about now, it just doesn't really have any impact on...
So it's just another fuck up is what you're saying.
Yeah.
God, that's like 3.
It's a giant break.
We're like 3 for 3.
It's just a different warp method that they've got going on. I mean, they very clearly still have warp methods. The Stargate's an entire warp method. They have to warp between planets, if I remember correctly. Motherships are ancient, and they warp all over the place. It's not that they didn't have warp gates, it's that warping was different back then.
Oh, how convenient.
They had the warp gate they had in StarCraft 1, it was interplanetary. It wasn't the Psionic Matrix warp gate.
It wasn't directly to the battlefield, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's like a new more aggressive, because I mean, after, I don't want to get into the lore too much, but after some sort of revolution or whatever happened with the Protoss, they kind of went more passive and put away all the motherships and all the Colossus, right? And so maybe they stopped with their forward development of aggressive technologies.
Yeah, they stopped their aggressive technologies significantly. They actually, a little tidbit: the shuttle and the Reaver are retrofitted civilian vehicles.
Nice. Did not know that.
They weren't actually military.
And another little tidbit for you: the very first Colossus that emerged from the ground scared the shit out of Tom Cruise. Sorry, I had to. I absolutely had to.
Well, that was the best War of the Worlds Colossus joke that I've heard in a while.
Well, thank you very much. I write my own stuff. So okay. Now let's talk a little bit about the Mothership.
War of the Worlds.
Yeah, let's talk about War of the Worlds. War of the Worlds. Little emo kid, Dakota Fanning, Tom Cruise. What a great cast.
Let's talk about something that makes more sense than War of the Worlds and go with the Mothership.
Here's what I want to know. Okay, so in Wings of Liberty, they had the Mothership proper, right? Where did the Mothership Core come from, and how does it...
We have an explanation for that.
Oh, okay.
Because the shit. These things are ancient, and there's a finite number of them. We need to make more of them. Mm-hmm. Well, we're being attacked right now, so let's just take the huge-ass crystal that powers it and make it, power our Nexus and turn it into another turret.
Okay, that said, what's the blue garbage that rotates around it?
As far as I can tell, it's oh no, it reminds me of a nuclear reactor that's just sort of floating around doing its thing. The stuff inside presumably is the power source.
But it's not like you're not saying that it's nuclear powered, because that's a little bit, primitive considering what... It's more of a Terran thing, right?
I'm just saying...
Wait, okay, so you're talking about, the little blue phantom things floating off of the edges of it?
Yeah, they kind of seem to rotate almost in a very mechanical way, right? And it seems to be in a pattern as well.
Right, you're not talking about the blue thing shining from the center of it.
No, that's presumably the crystal we'd mentioned, the power source or whatever.
Okay.
But how are they piloting it, maneuvering it? How does this blue stuff relate? Let's talk about that.
As far as I can tell, I think the barks that it gives when you click on it are an AI. I think it's an AI because it's a patriarchal culture, traditionally. Kala culture is patriarchal. So it would make sense that it's sort of an adjective.
Well, Dark Templar are matriarchal, are they not?
Yeah, but
it's... Solendis is a chick, too.
This is a traditional Kala unit. There's no question about, where it fits.
Well, then why does Solendis pilot one of them in one of those missions?
Solendis pilots a carrier.
Oh, carrier, well, whatever. Fucking.
And doesn't the Mothership Core have a female voice? And it's got a pylon picture, so that would lead me to believe that it's an AI.
Okay, so there's a reason why in sort of this male, female, assuming that their genders and all that are similar to ours, there's a reason why, for example, if you turn on your friggin' GPS, the little tom-tom things or whatever, or whatever, right, the robotic voices are almost always female, because males don't like taking direction from other males.
Males don't like taking directions, period. My dad yells at his GPS thing all the time.
Oh, yeah, but so they smooth it over by having it be a female, and females don't really give a shit. They're a lot less retarded that way. So,
well, they named this AI.
Did they? What's it called?
Justice.
And so does Justice pilot all of the Mothership cores?
Possible.
And does she do so remotely, or is there a drive that's put into the...
I'm pretty sure she's built into the crystal.
Okay. Yeah, there's something about photonic computer...
She's talking about the PsyWeb. PsyWeb established. So that actually, I think it could be a remote thing. Because, it's all...
Well, where would Justice be based, then?
Shakuras?
Possibly Shakuras. You would imagine that the seat traditionally would have been an Ire, but Ire is not really an option anymore.
Well, presumably this AI was formed post-Ire. And the reason behind you needing such a robust AI would probably be because their numbers were completely decimated. So in order to handle...
Explains why Solendis is piloting, is an executor. Namely because they just don't have the talent in the call anymore. A lot of other options that would have trumped her, despite her talent, have just kind of been eaten.
So you're not saying, like, for example, when the Zerg and the Protoss are going toe to toe in this giant war to determine who gets to fuck up in Ire or live on Ire, like the war to end all wars for them, that they didn't have like some female Protoss like protesting outside a government building saying, "Hey, give us the right to vote."
I don't think
Well, I mean, let's be real here. If there was going to be a society that would completely shut out the females for some period of time, despite the fact that their homeworld was under attack, it would have been the Conclave from Brood War. They pretty much sat around hunting down Tassadar while they were being annihilated.
Yeah, they were a little bit...
If someone was going to do it, it was them.
And I mean this in the nicest possible way, because I know a lot of people with this condition, or I don't want to say condition, but this way of thinking... it sounds a little bit autistic, because a lot of autistic people, I know this because of paleontology, there's a lot. They focus. They do focus a lot on certain things. It just depends on where you are in the spectrum.
This isn't autism in the slightest. This is just seriously misplaced priorities.
I think
this is completely different and in no way relates.
But you're not saying, like, for example, that their brain clearly functions different, right? So perhaps they have a little bit more of that savant. But when it comes to, and I'm not saying this is true for, like, autistic people, but, for example, the Protoss, maybe they do lack a little bit of common sense, where they're like, okay, there's Zerg right at our doorstep shitting all over us, but this Tassadar guy,
So your logic is autistic people can be incredibly focused, and so the Protoss must be like autistic people?
Well, gifted in...
That's your logic here? I think that's rather thin.
Gifted in a similar way, I would imagine. I would think, anyway, because they get very... they get very uptight with, like, we have to purge this world because there's Zerg on it. And then when Raynor said no, like it was New Haven, was it? The one where he meets that...
Oh, yeah, that was gross.
It was just Haven.
Yeah, Haven, yeah. Yeah, like, she gets really butthurt at the fact that there's a change in plans, or that there's a potential change in plans. Like, she doesn't want to let him do it. But because of his previous service, she's like, okay, well, I'll give you this chance, right? And presumably...
There's a slight possibility that... the writing is terrible in that game, and that whole scenario probably never would have happened the way it did.
One battlecruiser versus multiple carriers and Mothership Core, I think Raynor would have lost.
But not in Mothership Core, it was just a
full Mothership.
Super Mothership. It's not pure.
Well, it was also Hyperion, though, so Hyperion is not the worst. I want to say it's not like the shittiest, but yeah, I agree with you guys completely on that assessment. So, let's talk about, for a second here, when the Mothership Core is...
Wait, can we not call on Raynor's strategic and tactical savvy a little bit?
He's not.
I mean, granted, he's outmatched, but he's not a retard.
Like a fox, man.
I think he's thoroughly average at best.
Yeah.
He's thoroughly average?
Yep. Maybe above average.
He managed to... I mean, you have to give him some credit for his whole movement that he put on it. I mean...
The only credit I would give him
is dead.
First of all, he banged Kerrigan. That's pretty obvious, right? Credit where credit is due, right? And then, when she came back reinfested, he said, nope, you know what, I'm not all about that. Sorry, I could do better. He just kind of, like, backed off from her. So, credit where it's due, man.
I'm pretty sure he didn't... I'm pretty sure she got infested before he got the chance.
Yeah.
Really?
I think the entirety
She got infested pretty fast.
I thought it was, what was that mission? The very first one where you control her as a unit? Just the way they're talking, it seems like maybe they had banged just before.
No, they hadn't met before until that.
He seriously considers it, but she notices because she's psychic or whatever.
Well, of course. It's pretty obvious when a guy wants to bang a girl. There's a towering erection in front of her. Like, she doesn't need to be psychic.
Heavy armor suit, though, I think would cover that up, would it not?
Well, the codpiece, maybe. Maybe there might be room in the codpiece there.
Well, he was on a vulture, so.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's right.
That's true, yeah. So he had the boner compartment and This is really weird. Okay, so the last thing about the Mothership...
Something wrong with you guys.
It's true. So we're running a little bit out of time here, but I want to quickly cover what's going on when the Mothership Core is turning into a mothership proper. How does that work? Is it building the things, or are the components being warped in, or what's going on?
They're being warped.
Okay.
Yeah, so I actually was talking about this with somebody a while back, before Heart of the Swarm, actually, before the Mothership Core, and we determined that they use the fleet beacon as some sort of power source to power up the Nexus to act as a large beacon in and of itself to allow the Mothership Core to warp to, like act as a locator beacon, so the Mothership Core knows where to come in and can come in safely that close to a planet's surface. So that said, it's entirely possible that they could have just moved that beacon from the Nexus to the Mothership Core, and then the rest of the Mothership Core is warped in around it.
Okay, that's fair enough. Now, since we're talking about all this warping in stuff and whatever, why is it that a probe can't make like a little rift or whatever to make that Mothership Core warp in? Why do you have to go through the Nexus?
Well, consider how large this is. A Nexus, I think, if I remember correctly, a Nexus is about 100. No, it's like 50 meters tall or something, and the base is it's like 100 meters wide or something. And a Mothership Core, a full Mothership proper is about 1 kilometer in radius or so, a little bit larger.
Okay,
so it's also
How about what, Nathan? Nathan, go ahead.
The Nexus has the information to bring the Mothership Core in.
Right.
Well, what I was going to say is that it's likely that the Mothership has its own, warp mechanism. Like, it's capable of moving in and of itself. So it doesn't need a probe to open up a warp rift. It just needs, very, very detailed, positional, like a very, very detailed mapping of the area so that it doesn't, smash into the planet when it tries to warp in.
Well, why is it that you have to have this precision for the mothership? I mean, as far as I know, with physics, things scale a lot differently than what we perceive. But
probably because they're very expensive and very limited. I mean, they can't have a lot of motherships, so they just want to be very, very careful with them.
So they don't give the probe, because the probe is being presumably given orders by probably the same AI that we talked about previously, right?
It's the executor.
Well, it's probably an actual Protoss. Yeah, I was going to say, I wouldn't trust the overriding control of the battlefield to an AI if I've got a Protoss there to do it.
Well, like, why is it you can't have a probe just be like, bloop, and then warp in a Colossus right into a...
it's because
I think Colossi are manufactured, are they not? Aren't things out of the robotics bay manufactured?
No, things out of the robotics bay are still warped in, but they're pre-manufactured on Icarus now.
Yeah. They do all their construction in advance. The possible exception actually is the Nexus. The Nexus actually might be assembling probes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the Nexus would actually assemble the probes on the spot.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. But I'm just not clear on the difference between... I mean, this is such a big unit. It
probably just requires more specialized equipment. I mean, a probe is good at warping in simple things or buildings that aren't as complicated as, say, a Colossus.
So you're telling me a robotics facility is less complicated or more complicated, less complicated than a Zealot?
Well,
a Zealot is a living thing.
So, and a Zealot...
I mean, now granted, a robotics facility...
Zealots and Stalkers have specialized... I think part of it has to do with size, because things actually aren't particularly big that are warped in through warp gates or brought in through gateways. And that is clearly very specialized equipment. And the other thing is, from what I understand, the whole idea is the probe just puts down a little anchor, basically, that's like, hey, this is going to be
send something here.
Position. And it's really, from what I understand, pretty fragile. And so you want to do, it's only structures, things that are immobile, things that don't really have much in the way of moving parts initially. It's basically a shell with crap inside.
Well, then what's the little box that warps in from, like let's talk about a Zealot then, for example. Or if you're worried about the living organism stuff, why not be able to warp in a Colossus?
Because Colossus is probably pretty complicated.
Well, a Colossus is also, I don't know, it's like 300 feet tall, I think.
And it has spindly little legs.
Yeah, the legs are
I would not trust... Oh man, if that got botched, that'd be so bad. It would fall over and you can get back up and it gets eaten by Zerglings.
Just crushes the probe line when it gets
And as opposed to that, if you mess up a robotics facility, then you send a probe in and it makes a couple of repairs and then boom, you're back up to full.
Okay, that being said, Terrans are retarded. Flat out, they must be missing some chromosomes, because if you've got a Colossus, right, let's say, even if after you've taken its shields down, why don't you just take your siege tank and just go drive it right into the legs? Like, what's the Colossus going to do?
I don't know, the Colossus might move. It seems to me like it's got a pretty long stride. I would have to imagine... And when do you ever see a lone Colossus without 30 trillion Protoss units running around underneath it?
I actually use Colossus as a exclusive unit for harassment purposes.
Like silver.
I don't even know what league I'm in. I haven't even placed in Hotter.
Exactly. That's my point.
I see. Okay, well, before we end here, because we're getting kind of long, just one quick question, because I'm not a science magician like you guys, but would size really impact the warping mechanics?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, comparing, like, let's for example, say you're warping at a probe versus a mothership core. Would the mechanics change?
I mean, in theory, you could use the same principles, but it's kind of like comparing the automated manufacture of, like, a pen to the automated manufacture of a car.
Yeah.
In theory, you're using the same principles of, okay, I've got these little robots that are assembling something, but it's far more complicated to make a car from start to finish than it is to make a pen. Or like a plastic fork.
I try making a toaster from scratch.
Yeah, or even
All
a
right,
toaster.
all right. So, okay, say you're going to warp something in. How would you do it? You would pretty much have to scan it down and figure out what's inside of it. And then you would
we did a warp gate episode.
One grid to another.
Yeah, we did a warp gate episode where we determined it was magic.
Okay, so it's magic.
Yeah,
so what's it matter?
It's not quite.
It's magic, okay? Don't even lie to me, alright? You've got all these crazy wizards like Stephen Hawking that just wave their arm and there's black holes. This is clearly how physics works.
He's actually a warlock. We should.
All right. He's a warlock then. Stephen Hawking, the warlock. All right, guys. Well, we've run out of time. In fact, we're over time, so River is probably going to have fun cutting this down. We're just going to do our little closeout thing and say, hey, everyone, next time you're at the old folks' home and you're doing your duty and palliative care and changing diapers and stuff, just tell everyone. Tell everyone to watch the show. Come in and hang out, volunteer, whatever. Or you can, go to a club, and we've discussed this before, use it to pick up women. And also, if you have not heard of it before, One Goal, go check them out. They work incredibly hard, much harder than I work. I'm a lazy fuck. They work really hard at what they're doing. So it's not just a simple mod. It's not just QQ balance. I want the lurker in. No, they're actually working as a team, and I think that they deserve more attention than they get.
Thanks for having us on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, see you guys later.